You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Heading to this year's Black Hat USA, the N2K Cyberwire team will be on site recording from our podcast studio in the Spectre Ops Kennel Club. If you're interested in joining us for a conversation or learning more about what we're recording throughout the week, visit sponsor.thecyberwire.com for more information. And make sure you stop by the studio and meet the N2K Cyberwire team. We'll see you there.
Are all batteries the same? That's like asking if all soccer players are the same. Take Messi, the most decorated player ever. Is there any other player who has achieved that? No, just him. Now take Duracell. Is there any other battery with power boost ingredients inside? No, just Duracell. Remember, goats only trust goats because they're built different. And Messi only trusts Duracell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caveat, N2K Cyberwire's privacy, surveillance, law, and policy podcast. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is my co-host Ben Yellen from the University of Maryland Center for Cyber Health and Hazard Strategies. Hey there, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
On today's show, Ben has the story of the European Union's latest effort to achieve technological sovereignty. I've got concerns from experts on the growing potential for a surveillance state here in the U.S. While this show covers legal topics and Ben is a lawyer, the views expressed do not constitute legal advice. For official legal advice on any of the topics we cover, please contact your attorney. This episode is supported by Black Hat USA. If you follow the research, you know a lot of it breaks on Black Hat stages. Hundreds of peer-reviewed briefings, more than 100 hands-on trainings, and the largest business hall in Black Hat's history. 6 days to learn the skills you'll need tomorrow, August 1st to the 6th. Use code CYBERWIRE for $200 off your briefings pass at blackhat.com. We'll see you in Vegas. All right, Ben, lots going on this week. What do you got for us?
There sure is. So because there's lots going on, of course, I chose a story that actually came out a couple of weeks ago. But we had something urgent to cover last week,
right.
But I wanted to give this due attention. So it comes from the Lawfare blog, and it's written by Kenneth Propp. And the article is about the European Union's proposed Cloud and AI Development Act, or CADA. Mm-hmm. This is part of a broader EU strategy to achieve technological sovereignty, to be less reliant on the United States and our cloud providers. And I think you have to start by looking at this outside the context of technology, and not to make everything about Trump, but I do think a lot of countries have reconsidered the fact that they've relied on the United States for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Economic might, economic support, things like weapon systems for kinetic warfare. Just basically like things that states have relied on the United States to produce and to share with them, that because we have an administration that prides itself on being America first, and because we've had the things like threats of tariffs or actual tariffs, I think a lot of countries are rethinking that relationship. I mean, most famously, people heard the speech at the Davos conference from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, where he made the point, I think very eloquently, that the world isn't the same that it was a few years ago. All of these other countries, these other Western countries, have to become more self-sufficient, whether that relates to technology, whether that relates to weapon systems. And I think Trump is just kind of the wake-up call that these countries have been slacking on technological development.
Let me just jump in for a second, because the thing that really struck me about the movement on this is that it's that old saying about how trust is slowly earned but quickly lost.
Totally.
And that it's not so much Donald Trump himself. Obviously, he's the catalyst for this, and his, as you say, his push to America first. But it's simply the demonstration that this is what the U.S. is capable of.
Exactly.
That one administration, whether it's Trump or someone else, can come in and change our direction so quickly and so distinctly to throw off the world order.
Yeah, and like Trump has backed down on a lot of things. You could imagine a future administration that doesn't back down and follows through with all of these threatening tariffs, or actually succeeds in withdrawing the United States from our international obligations, like with NATO.
Right.
So it's no longer something that's theoretical. I think it's forcing countries, and in this case, the European Union, to think seriously about self-sufficiency. So the catalyst for this particular concern is that most of the European cloud market, 70%, is owned by U.S. companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. And then of the remaining 30%, only about half of that is controlled by European providers. So Asian companies generally control the rest. And there are a couple of risks that come with this. One is there's something called the U.S. Cloud Act, which allows authorities within the United States to access data held by American companies when stored in Europe. So if 70% of the market in Europe is controlled by U.S. companies, then our surveillance state, which we'll talk about in our next segment here, would have access to lots of communications of people within the European Union. And then the other issue that they've mentioned is a so-called kill switch, where crippling U.S. sanctions, other government actions, including tariffs, could force American companies to suspend services to European users. One example he gave is how the International Criminal Court made this finding about what's happened in Israel, calling it a genocide, and the United States imposed sanctions on the International Criminal Court and everybody who, I guess, contributes to it. And this was kind of a warning sign that the U.S. can impose these sanctions and it would have a big impact in Europe. So how does this law work? Basically, this law would create an EU-wide system of 4 sovereignty assurance levels for cloud providers.
Serving like DEFCON levels?
It's basically DEFCON levels, yeah.
Okay.
Serving what they call sensitive public sector contracts, fancy word for contracting with the government. For level 1, which is the highest level, see, we really are in DEFCON levels,
right?
Yeah, I
know. I've always found it to be counterintuitive.
Me too. Level 1 to me seems like, everything's okay. We're only at level 1.
Right, no. But I learned this from watching war games. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. I think that's kind of how we all learned about it.
Yeah.
All right, so here's how this law would actually work. CADA would create an EU-wide system of 4 sovereignty assurance levels going up from level 1 to level 4, which is the strictest.
Yeah, so this is the opposite of DEFCON.
Opposite of DEFCON, exactly. This gets so confusing.
Okay.
So level 1, data must be hosted in the EU and protected from certain foreign reporting requirements. Level 2, providers must demonstrate that foreign governments cannot access the data or shut down services. At level 3, providers cannot be controlled or be legally dependent on a non-EU country, i.e. the United States of America. And at the strictest level, the EU would require independence from foreign-controlled components and the highest cybersecurity certifications. For your garden variety contracts from most public sector agencies, that's going to remain at levels 1 and 2, which means U.S. cloud providers could generally be involved as long as they loosen reporting requirements and they make assurances that the United States is not going to access data or shut down services. But when we're talking about very sensitive, rights-affecting government work or things relating to national security or foreign affairs, you could get up to that level 3 or level 4, and that might lock out U.S. companies. There are a bunch of exceptions that could allow non-EU providers to participate if there's no alternative, but this is something that I think U.S. companies are going to have to pay attention to, that into the future, they're going to have lesser access to the European market when it comes to these public sector services. And it also could partially inflame the already existing tensions relating to trade and diplomacy that we have with the European Union. And that's where this has received some criticism from the U.S. and affiliated companies. But this is just something that I think reflects the broader diplomatic scenario that we're seeing in the world today, where companies are rethinking their relationship with the United States. And this is a manifestation of that, which could have a huge impact on our cloud providers.
Isn't this a big business opportunity for companies in the EU? Like I know we had a story over on the Cyberwire about France really shifting their cloud storage to a French provider for this very reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge opportunity. I kind of want to move to, what's the coolest country in the European Union? There are a lot of cool ones. Let's go with Sweden.
Okay.
I want to move there and start my own cloud computing company and be able to fulfill these services. They'll have no clue that I'm just an American tourist who decided to move there. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. Now, there are a lot of barriers to entry in Europe to creating these companies. It's just kind of the way these countries are. There is a reason why most big tech companies are located in the United States. Those reasons are complicated, but a lot of it is the economics of agglomeration with having Silicon Valley there. You have the intellectual capital.
Right.
You have the Silicon Valley investors. You have high-skilled immigrants who have come to the United States to help create some of these applications. That infrastructure already exists. So Europe, I think, if they're going to get serious about their sovereignty, has to think about those types of things. Having a more skilled workforce, bringing down some of the regulatory barriers they have in various countries. This is, I think, going to be a long-term effort on behalf of the European Union. It's not something that's going to change overnight. But this might be the catalyst that gets these countries more serious about supporting industries within the European Union, supporting companies. Maybe they even change tax policies. In some ways, I'd hate to see that because I enjoy a progressive taxation system, but it might be that as a way to incentivize the creation of these companies, you have to change tax structures, and for new companies, maybe they get some type of tax credit or tax break. And you'd have to have the cooperation of the countries that make up the European Commission because they're the ones that are developing this policy. So who knows how this is going to play out, but I think this at least could be the catalyst that changes the fundamental relationship between our tech companies in the United States and the European Union, at least as it relates to cloud computing in the public sector.
Do you see echoes of some of the things that U.S. companies have had to deal with China? I'm particularly thinking about Apple, who has had to deal with some of China's requirements of data being stored locally in China, thereby giving, it's sort of the flip side of this, giving the Chinese government access to that data, which is not something that would be Apple's impulse, but if you want to do business in China, you got to play by the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of it, even though the motivation from the EU and China, as you say, is kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
The fact that these companies will have to change their business practices to operate as cloud computing services within Europe, that has significant consequences. And that might require some very difficult decisions from these companies because unless the U.S. changes its policy or revises its own Cloud Computing Act, companies might have to say to U.S. regulators, hey, we want to do business in Europe. We're not going to comply with your reporting requirements. We're going to make sure that there's no kill switch. We're not going to give you access to European users' information. And then what's the U.S. government going to do? Are they going to seek some type of redress against these companies? Or are they going to prohibit them, as the Trump administration has done in other contexts, from getting contracts with the U.S. government? So I think it's not an easy decision for these companies. It's much more difficult in my mind than something like GDPR, where it is a higher floor standard for data protection.
Right.
But you're not kind of fundamentally going against the interests of the United States government. You're just, I mean, I guess that's in the eye of the beholder. But in that case, you're just agreeing to this higher standard that you're going to apply universally because it's easier to just have one standard. Same with CCPA. I think this is categorically different.
Let me float a hypothetical.
I love when you do that.
And I hit you where you live.
All right.
So, as you know, my wife and I recently had a vacation. We were traveling in upstate New York. And one of the things we discovered is that being out of the state of Maryland, where we live, we could see more Orioles baseball games than we can when we're in Maryland.
Now, this is a question. Now, finally, this is relevant to my interests.
That's exactly. So my point is a lot of streaming media services are geographically bound, right? You cannot watch this out of your zone. This movie is not licensed for your part of the world. I mean, we even had this back in the days of DVDs where you had different zones and you could buy a region unlocked DVD player.
I couldn't watch my YouTube TV services when I was in Europe.
Yeah.
Which was a major disappointment because that's where a lot of the sporting events are held. So this is the real problem here,
Dave. You
Dave.
See where I'm going here is, could we envision a future where data itself is fenced in, and this notion of an open internet, which we enjoy today, where you can pull data from servers all over the world and not think twice about it, you being in the U.S. might not be able to pull that database from Sweden.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most people, if they sat down and thought about that, really wouldn't benefit from a system of a siloed internet where something that's being streamed in another country on that country's service is inaccessible in the United States. I think we enjoy having access to those things. But on the other hand, like, it's not rank and file voters or consumers who are going to be making these decisions. I mean, I think the way our government sees it and the way the EU sees it is this relates to sovereignty and national security. And so they might be willing to sacrifice the convenience and the preferences of the country's consumers or users in order to ensure things like technological sovereignty, which is, I think, a more pressing policy goal from the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, there are things when we're talking about streaming sporting events, there are some workarounds, although they're not as successful as they used to be. They're getting better at sniffing out VPNs.
Right.
But in other contexts, like, there are not going to be workarounds. So that could be the consequences, that we are shutting ourselves off from their market and they're shutting themselves out from the U.S. market, and we do become more siloed. I think it just kind of depends on how you see globalization in the first place. Like,
right.
There are benefits to it, and there are detriments to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be great if we could reap the benefits without having to deal with any of the detriments. But as we found out through international free trade over the past 30, 40 years, it's not always that easy. People like cheap goods, but they also don't like losing factories in their hometown.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Do you suppose, how do I say this? Are there any indications that this administration might be retaliatory when it comes to this? That is their nature.
This administration retaliatory?
I was trying to walk gently there, Ben, and you just burst through the wall like a Kool-Aid man.
I keep waiting for the Trump Truth Social post that just goes nuclear on this.
Yeah,
like the so-called EU and their Cloud, CADA Act, terrible name.
Right.
I haven't seen it yet, but yes, I do think there's a good chance that.
You think that these U.S. cloud providers, they have the president's ear, right? He listens to them. So if they're looking at decreased shareholder value because of this, that is a way probably to get his attention.
Yeah, he does not like when the stock market goes down.
Yeah.
But also, I think, as we've seen with tariffs, he's willing to go against the wishes of these titans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've seen that in the Anthropic dispute as well. Like, if it's
true.
a battle that he wants to pick, I think he's fine being at odds with some of the business leaders who have supported him in the past. I think if he legitimately believes that this is about our sovereignty and that this is an America First policy, I think he has expressed a willingness to supersede the bare economics of it.
Yeah. I guess it's interesting to think about. This is really a wake-up call for the world, and things are going to be different from here on out, at least for the near term. But I guess what I'm saying is this, to me, in my mind, goes beyond this particular administration.
Totally.
This has long-lasting
And I think you can imagine, let's say, a president, whomever, takes office in 2029, they go on a apology tour to other countries and are like,
right.
well, we want to reestablish diplomatic relationships. I think the countries aren't going to be like, okay, it's all good now.
No, it's a fool me once kind of thing.
Totally.
Right?
Like somebody like Trump can run and win in the United States. And in the long term, these countries have to be prepared for that scenario.
Yeah.
And if you want to know how countries are thinking about that, I really encourage you to watch the speech that Prime Minister Carney of Canada gave at the Davos Forum, which is, I think, the purest articulation of, like, we have to rethink everything. And it's not just, he was talking about Canada, but it was also to other Western democracies. Like, we've been the minnow on the shark of the United States, and that relationship is not going to work anymore. So change your policies. Like, I know you don't want to spend a certain amount of your national budget on defense, but it's a new era. You're going to have to. So whatever you have to do to make that happen, like, make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think the EU, in that spirit, is enacting or in the process of enacting this legislation.
Right. All right. Well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. Let's take a quick break here to hear from our show sponsors. We will be right back after these messages. AI is making phishing attacks faster, more convincing, and harder for people to spot. And traditional security awareness and phishing training weren't designed for this level of attack. HawksHunt helps security teams prepare employees for the attacks they face every day with personalized phishing training that adapts to each employee and reduces risky behavior over time. For IT and security leaders looking to strengthen their human layer of defense without adding more manual work, visit hawkshunt.com/cyberwire to learn more. That's HOXHUNT.com/cyberwire. And we are back. Ben, my story this week comes from The Guardian. This is an article written by Bruce Schneier and John Penny. Bruce Schneier, very well known within cybersecurity circles. He's one of the longtime respected pundits, expert on cybersecurity things. And they're talking broadly about the possibilities for AI transforming surveillance into a much more powerful system than it is today, capable of monitoring all sorts of things in public life. And, we talk about the slippery slope and what's next, and we see things being chipped away at day by day, month by month. I guess it's easy to feel like you don't want to cry chicken little, right? But at the same time, this article points out China has done a lot of this stuff.
I mean, the moral to the story of the boy who cried wolf is not, in fact, that there's no wolf.
Right.
Just going to throw that out there.
Right. So they point out that future AI surveillance systems can monitor people's actions in public spaces. And we're already seeing things like that. They could detect violations, just routine violations, and automatically fine you for them, like things like littering or jaywalking. I was thinking of, I don't know if have you ever seen the film Demolition Man? I'm pretty sure it's Demolition Man. It's a Sylvester Stallone movie, of all people. And part of the story is that they're living in this futuristic world where, like, I think Sylvester Stallone's character utters a curse word and this voice pops up and says, public profanity, fine, $10, that sort of thing, right? Which is funny in the movie, but how crazy an idea is it? We have automated red light cameras.
Yeah, not that I've ever violated any of those.
Speed cameras, speed tax. We've got flock cameras. So we can imagine many ways that surveillance could ooze into the other areas of our lives. And the authors of this article are saying we need to be vigilant about that. We have to be careful There's the old boiling the frog scenario where slowly these things can change while we don't realize it. And then the next thing you know, you look around and you're being monitored in ways that you probably wouldn't like to be monitored.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, this forces us to admit that the technology exists and it's largely being adopted and deployed. I don't think we're in the full 1984 hellscape yet that's described in this article, but I think certainly there are pieces of it that are already in place. So the question is, what do we do about it? There's a theory in the legal world called the equilibrium adjustment theory, where as surveillance technology evolves and gets stronger and allows people or allows governments to do much broader surveillance on the population, then the laws should equally adjust to match that new reality. In other words, we should have more stringent Fourth Amendment standards for government surveillance. And in that spirit, we saw what we talked about last week, the Chattree decision.
Right.
I think that's a recognition from the Supreme Court that surveillance technology has fundamentally changed. And even though that decision was limited to whether there was a search in that case as it related to the geofence warrant, I think it's a recognition that people still should retain an expectation of privacy in things like the whole of their movements or their political, professional, and religious associations or things they do in their private lives. And I think it's going to be incumbent on the court system as more of these criminal cases come up where you have some type of all-encompassing surveillance to look at it and say, can we maintain the same expectation of privacy that people had before this technology came into our lives? That's not going to be a full solution because that really only protects accused criminals. For the rest of us, I think if you're very privacy conscious, you're going to have to spend a lot of your life opting out of certain things. And there's some things you're not going to be able to opt out of. You have to go in public. So if you're caught on the litter cam, you don't really have a choice. There's only one way to get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
But for other surveillance monitoring, a lot of it we just kind of agree to without thinking. I'm guilty of this, as I'm sure you are, of just agreeing to the terms of service. And then
yeah, of course.
For the next 30 years, some private company can track our location. But I think what this article highlights is it is incumbent upon all of us to recognize that this is the new reality and take those measures that are within our control to mitigate the impact.
I'm curious for your take on an element of this. I guess the groundswell of public support. And I'm thinking specifically of a story I saw in the last week or so where I believe it was a gentleman who's in the Air Force, and he took it upon himself to go around his community with, let's just say, a Sawzall, and started cutting down flock cameras. And he got caught. Can't do that, obviously. What he did was bad. It was wrong. It was illegal. But there's been a groundswell of support for his legal defense. People from all over are sending him money to help pay for his lawyers.
You worry about something like jury nullification.
Right.
You get enough people on a jury there who hate the technology that they just decide, no matter what the evidence is, I'm not going to convict for that type of crime. My take is that's dangerous.
Okay.
The worst manifestation I've seen of this is Luigi Mangione, where whatever you think about the healthcare industry, he allegedly committed cold-blooded murder. He's going to go on trial for it. And people are cheering him on and are wearing Luigi costumes outside his judicial hearings. And I'm deeply disturbed by that because, however bad you think the substantive policy issue is, to me, the answer is never to commit more crimes.
Right. But if you're a policymaker, you have to sit up and pay attention to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's why people do those things, is to get the attention of policymakers.
Right.
I just want to make clear that, I don't think those tactics are acceptable. But yes, I think it shows a level of societal disgust with these new surveillance tactics. And I think that's something that's kind of hard to deny at this point.
Yeah, this article also points out some of the tactics that have been used in China, basically like public shaming kinds of things, where an individual might default on a loan or have bad credit, and they'll post a picture of them on an electronic billboard saying they're an untrustworthy person. And we already have things.
The billboard of shame.
Right. But we have, here we have credit scores. We have, I don't know about you, but you go to buy a car or something, and they go to run your credit, and you're like, well, I hope this works out for me.
I know. It's like, I hope I remember to pay the cable bill 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, I guess part of my point here is that there are already these things that are not completely under our control, right? These rating systems for us as individuals, and you understand on a societal level the need for some of them. If you have a criminal record, an employer should be able to know about that. But at the same time, there's the opportunity, and AI accelerates those opportunities for things to kind of spin out of control.
Yeah, I think so. I think AI is the accelerant because all it is a massive multiplication of capabilities that already exist. Like, we can do video surveillance, but prior to AI, it requires some police officer to sit in front of 12 hours of footage. Like, with AI as a force multiplier, all of those jobs at least can be made more efficient and in some cases fully automated. So it's just accelerating phenomena that already existed. It's just enhancing the capabilities that we already have.
Yeah. What about the chilling effects here? It's another thing they mention. The author John Penny has a book titled Chilling Effects: Repression, Conformity, and Power in the Digital Age. So this notion that knowing that we're living in a panopticon alters our behavior, and the potential effects that has on society as a whole. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's totally legitimate, and I would hate to see people not participate in First Amendment protected activities because of a fear of surveillance, but clearly it happens. In some ways, this is something we've been dealing with for a long time as a surveillance state has grown. I think back in the 1960s and 1970s, you could feel more comfortable joining an organization like the Weather Underground because you didn't realize that the federal government was infiltrating it and they had all of these wiretapping tools. Now we know all of these things exist. So if you have some type of disfavored political opinion or religious view, I think that does create a disturbing disincentive to express yourself and to be involved in First Amendment protected activities. And in some ways, what kind of First Amendment do we actually have if people feel that reluctance to speak or to express themselves in a certain way? That's why I think it is incumbent upon the legal system to not only ensure that we have the same level of Fourth Amendment protection, but that people don't feel the chilling effect of a mass surveillance state.
What about, there's this thing I've been tracking, keeping an eye on, noticing, however you want to label it, and it's groups of people using their numbers for civil disobedience, knowing that there's no way the police are going to be able to take them all. And I'm thinking of, I guess they call them teen takeovers of streets. I'm also thinking of all the folks who ride around on the dirt bikes in Baltimore. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. You can't arrest all of us if there's...
Right. There's so many people that there's no way law enforcement, it just overwhelms law enforcement's ability to focus on any one person. But I guess the flip side of that related to this story is, what if facial recognition just provides you with a list of everybody, just goes through the crowd. Boop, 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 boop. Here's your list of everybody who was here.
I mean, that kind of happened with the January 6th investigation with not just facial recognition, but also geofence warrants.
Right.
Where it was there's no way you would have been able to identify, even 15 years ago, the thousands of people who went into the Capitol building that day. But the surveillance technology allows people to do it. I mean, prior to effective speed cameras being employed. Like, you had to have a sufficient number of officers out in the field pulling people over and giving them speeding tickets that it served as an effective deterrent.
Right. There's a built-in limiting factor.
That's the limiting factor. It's also limiting that, like, if you see one cop car, that cop car presumably can only do one traffic stop at a time. I'm sure the capability exists, and I know this firsthand, to just massively send out tickets for violating the speeding cameras, where, like, I think the volume is no limitation whatsoever. So yeah, I think that's a major concern, that these things that previously would have required significant law enforcement resources, that was the limiting principle, that was the limiting factor. And now that's gone because of the way these tools have evolved to work.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing to consider. And as I said, this article does consider a lot of it. I think it's thoughtful and a read that is worth your time. So we will have a link to that in the show notes. Of course, we'd love to hear from you. If there's something you'd like us to consider for the show, please email us. It's caveat@n2k.com. As organizations grow, so does complexity. New applications are deployed, vendors are granted temporary access, and remote support tools are installed. Many of them never go away. In my recent conversation at RSAC 2026 with Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer at ThreatLocker, he explains how these forgotten tools create hidden pathways into enterprise environments and why attackers increasingly exploit what's already inside the network instead of trying to break through the perimeter. Learn how to reduce lingering access, shrink your attack surface, and implement zero trust more effectively by listening to the full conversation at explore.thecyberwire.com/threatlocker.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
And that is Caveat, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to caveat@n2k.com. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. The show is mixed by Trey Hester. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Ben Yellen.
Thanks for listening.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
What happens when AI agents gain access to the same systems, applications, and credentials as your employees? According to Arvind Nithrakashayap, CTO and co-founder of Rubrik, that reality is already here. As AI agents proliferate across enterprise environments, organizations face a growing challenge. How do you govern systems that operate at machine speed? To learn more about AI sprawl, the risk it creates, and how organizations can prepare, visit explore.thecyberwire.com/rubric to hear the full conversation.